your PayPal. Maybe are you sure you spelt it right? Tayk Gray?
We'll take care of that because we are now live. All right. So I've debated you before on Debate Cafe, and now we're doing an impromptu. And yeah, why don't you introduce yourself? Actually, I'll go first so that you can just launch right into your thing. Um, Obviously, anyone who's watching this is going to know I'm an atheist, and I don't think there's any reason to believe in God. And I think that's about all we need at this point. Go ahead, Ultimated.
Yes, this is Ultimated Judeo-Christian with a YouTube channel titled Ultimated Judeo-Christian. It is the same as my StreamYard avatar here, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. I am here to debate Snake was right in regards to Judeo-Christianity. So that's the main focus of my youtube.com channel. So with that being said, I can get straight into the syllogism unless you want to say something before we get started.
Well, and I just wanted to mention and thank Bree for coming here and moderating.
Happy to help there, Snake.
I think
yeah, this should be a nice conversation.
Yeah, this is the first time you've been on my channel, I think.
It is, yeah. First time I've popped in over here. Happy to be here.
Sweet. All right.
He wants to give a syllogism to start things. Is that how you want to start this? That's fine by me.
And you can share your screen if you want to.
No, that's all right. If you want, for the listeners, if you want to follow along the syllogism, I have it listed within the About page of my youtube.com channel. I have posted it within this private chat. So I'll read it out without going into the brackets for now. I'll go into the brackets after. So premise 1. So again, this ultimative categorical syllogism is proving Judeo-Christian / biblical presuppositionalism. If A is in C, then B is in C. Premise 1, God's biblically / awesomely ultimate truthful love. Premise 2, God authorized the Bible / biblicism. Conclusion, thus Judeo-Christian / biblical presuppositionalism follows. So premise 1 backs sacred theology / revealed theology, the creator-creature distinction, perfect being theology, ultimate / brute facts, and God's prescriptive laws of logic / thought. Premise 2 backs special revelation of evidentialism / epistemic foundationalism. The conclusion backs the law of rational inference. So what is your response to premise 1?
Is it saying God is biblically, awesomely, ultimate, truthful love?
I think you cut out there for the. Can you repeat that?
It's saying God is biblically, awesomely, ultimate, truthful love?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the first comment I have is, where are you getting this logic of if A is in C, then B is in C?
From God, as God is logical, you're cutting out. I may have been
he's not cutting out
talking you just now.
Is it? It sounds fine to you, Bree?
Yeah, I don't hear any cutting out on Snake's end. Well, let's continue on. If it continues to happen, we'll see what we can do to troubleshoot it.
Yeah, everything was fine just until now.
I've got pretty powerful internet here, so I'm not. I don't think it's my end, but we'll
it's
just
fine
continue.
now.
Okay. So I don't know what type of logic that is. If A is in C, then B is in C. Why are A and B tied?
Yes. Because the conclusion, Judeo-Christian / biblical presuppositionalism, follows from premise 1 and 2. So premise 1 is indirectly in the conclusion, and if it's therefore it is in C. So B follows entailing the conclusion to follow.
What premise establishes that A and B necessarily are both in C or are necessarily together?
Premise 1 is an indirect statement to the conclusion.
Okay, well let's try this. What is A?
Premise 1.
Is that your first premise?
Yes.
Okay, what is C?
The conclusion, thus Judeo-Christian / biblical presuppositionalism follows. So
And
premise
premise
2
two.
is directly, premise 2 is directly in the conclusion following what I said earlier.
That is illogical because that is begging the question. Because you have your
It's not
premise
begging the
If
question.
your premise is in your conclusion, that's a tautology.
It's indirectly. It's not directly.
But
so if A is in C, then B is in C.
If premise 1 is in the conclusion, then premise 2 is in the conclusion? I've never heard of that kind of logic.
No, premise 1 is indirectly within the conclusion. Premise 2 is directly in the conclusion. So if A is in C, then B is in C. So we all know God exists even before reading the Bible. And as we get exposed to the Bible, depending on your knowledge of it, we know directly that our Judeo-Christian God exists. So that supports the formal logic of if A is in C, then B is in C. So it's not begging the question because, again, premise 1 is indirectly in the conclusion.
If any premise is in the conclusion at all, that's begging the question and it's illogical, so that's not a syllogism.
It is logical. It's indirectly. So every premise.
What is the conclusion, by the way?
Starting premise.
Oh, I see it.
Every premise has to reference ultimate truthful love, aka God. And the conclusion is more precisely our Judeo-Christian God. So it's not begging the question. So this is a possible straw man argument. You're attacking the form of the syllogism rather than the actual premises themselves. So premise 1 is an ultimate fact backing the law of identity that A is A. So God equals an ultimate fact and vice versa. So to justify this even further, God is absolute, eternal, and revelatory. An ultimate fact is absolute, eternal, and revelatory. Thus, premise 1 of my syllogism is an ultimate fact. So you just have to accept that before we move on to premise 2.
So I don't have to accept that, but I'm still kind of stuck on this if A is in C, then B is in C thing. So
I've already explained this.
I'm not getting it because it seems completely illogical by definition. So if we take a valid,
indirectly,
that's not really logical language.
It is. It's formal logic.
I've read a logic book. I've never seen that.
It's a categorical syllogism. You can Google this.
So, what do I Google?
A categorical syllogism. If A is in C, then B is in C. So obviously, the conclusion has to reference ultimate truthful love. That's premise 1. But it sidestep begging the question fallacy because A is indirectly within the conclusion. So premise 1 is in regards to God's existence in general. The conclusion is more precisely our Judeo-Christian God.
So that's
So
not
it's not.
a categorical syllogism. You said
It
it's
is.
A is in C, then B is in C. That doesn't follow.
It does follow.
Where does it follow
If-
that B must be in C because A is?
Because I've already explained this. You're going to have to
Just from its
summarize my justification now.
divorced from your argument, like just the structure of if A is in C, then B is in C. You could replace that with anything. How does that follow?
I've explained this over and over again. So this is where you have to summarize my justification. So again, premise 1 is indirectly within the conclusion.
I don't know what that means.
So it's not.
So
it
for example,
it means.
Yes, your
if you don't-
example, please. I think that would help.
yeah. So taking the classic example of a syllogism, Socrates is a man, premise 1. Premise 2, all men are mortal. Conclusion, Socrates is mortal. It does not follow that just because that premise 1 is in the conclusion, that therefore premise 2 is in a conclusion, because
but premise 1 has to
I could have
reference
Socrates
truth.
is a man in 1, and I could have Socrates is an old man as premise 2.
Premise 1 would always
so B
be
does not necessarily follow with
conclusion.
1.
It does follow. Every valid syllogism would align to this, is that the conclusion would always reference premise 1. In this case, more precisely, my syllogism as premise 1 references ultimate truthful love, aka God. So the conclusion references premise 1, obviously, and premise 2 follows from premise 1. So now summarize
So
that,
are you
because
just
I've
trying to
explained this
say
3 times. Summarize what I said. Don't ask me a question. Summarize what I said, because I've explained this over 3 times from my memory.
I can't make sense of what you're saying? That's why I'm asking
Can you
questions.
attempt
Then
to
let me
steel man
simplify it.
Snake? Hold on. Can you attempt to steel man of what you understand of what he's saying, Snake, so that we can move forward?
Are you trying to say that if the premises
Steel man
are
my position. Don't ask a question.
well, that is how I steal, man. I
Summarize
can
my
rephrase my
justification
question as a statement. From what I'm gathering, you're saying that this is my best steel man of what you're saying is, if the premises are sound, then the conclusion follows. Is that what that means when you
Yes,
say if A is in C, then B is in C?
Yes, you can say that.
Okay. That's a very bizarre way of saying it, in my opinion.
It shouldn't be. You're so again.
I've just
back to
never
the
heard logical structure in that way, and I don't.
It's a categorical syllogism. You can Google this. I could do it
I
with
did,
you, so
and
we
it
could be
doesn't
on the same page.
I did, and it doesn't say if A is in C, then B is in C. Am I crazy?
It does state
Bree,
that.
have you ever heard of that before?
I've got it pulled up here. What I see for a categorical syllogism is an argument containing 3 categorical propositions, 2 premises, and 1 conclusion. So that's your standard syllogism. It's like the most standard type of syllogism you can present. I don't see where it would have when you say indirectly, maybe we can get some clarification on what you mean by that. Maybe that's where the confusion lies. I don't see anything in the description that talks about direct or indirect at all. So maybe
I've
that's
just posted in the private yourdictionary.com.
Mm-hmm.
That contains a categorical syllogism, and it gives you a picture. If A is part, well, in this case, it says if A is part of C, then B is part of C. And there are pictures A, B, C with circles. Syllogism, a form of deductive reasoning where you arrive at a specific conclusion by examining 2 other premises or ideas. So my categorical syllogism is valid. You're possibly dodging the actual premises because you know God exists, as God is ultimate truthful love. However, we have to be taught of the proper noun God, as everyone defaultly is subject to our Judeo-Christian God. However, everyone would indirectly or directly know that our Judeo-Christian God exists, depending on their knowledge of the Bible /biblicism.
And the site's got a lot of ads.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just phrased very awkwardly for me. So let's go to your first premise.
I'll repeat premise one.
God. Go ahead.
Premise one, God's biblically / awesomely ultimate truthful love. Respond.
I don't know what that means. So you're saying God is biblically awesomely ultimate truthful love. Not sure what you mean by biblically. If you could explain that.
What I mean by that is the adverb biblically has multiple meanings, so it can mean something to great extent, awesome, impressive. So to put this into context, the moment we come into existence, we are in awe to God's ultimate truthful lovingness. So that's why I've stated biblically / awesomely God's ultimate truthful love. So I'll just summarize that. Yep.
The truthful love makes us in awe.
Yeah, we are in awe. Everyone at the earliest starting point of their existence is in awe to God, as He is ultimate truthful love. So we're not in awe to matter. We are in awe to God and that He created matter. So that's premise one. That's why it supports a categorical syllogism or prima facie, that the moment we... Yep.
What is the difference between ultimate truthful love and just love?
Ultimate truthful love entails eternalness, as only... And if you reference love, that can be a contingency. So only an all-powerful / omnipotent mind can be eternal, as they have to be chaotically free and absolutely loving life without suicidal tendencies. So the universe can't be eternal because it doesn't contain a mind to sustain itself. So this goes back to premise one, God's biblically / awesomely ultimate truthful love for the aforestated reasons. Reply?
Could I restate this premise as God is eternal love that makes all things in awe of it?
You can say that, yes.
Okay. I reject this first premise because I don't know how you can have eternal love. But more importantly, I am not in awe of it, so it can't be true.
There are 2 points here. The pronoun I references God, as God is ultimate truthful love, entailing you to be a creature, or in other words, a temporality. To address your second point, you would have been in awe to God's existence from when you were a baby.
No.
So you can't make that. Yes, you can't say that.
I just did,
can't have that memory.
True.
You can't have that memory. You can't think back that far to when you came into existence ever since you were a baby. But I know you were in awe to
state that either because you don't have any access to my baby memories.
I can, because God is awesome. So obviously all babies would all be in awe to God. at the earliest starting point.
you know my thoughts as an infant because God is awesome.
Yes, I don't know all of your thoughts, but at the earliest point, when your self-consciousness came into existence, you would have been in awe to God. You
No,
can't.
because I didn't understand what God was until I already had memories.
You would have had to be taught. I've already explained this. You had to have been taught the proper noun God. However, by default, we all know an ultimate perfect being exists, as we are
No, because I didn't even
temporalities.
have a concept of that until I was much older.
You have to appear for a conception. We have been given innate knowledge of God. He has revealed himself to us. So
Not to
we
me.
yes. God is love, therefore he would reveal himself to everybody.
Well, I
So
guess
that
you just disproved God because he hasn't revealed himself to me.
yes, you are a creature contingent on God. So when you say the pronoun I, you are referencing God as an ultimate standard,
No, I'm
as
not, because
God does it.
I don't believe in God, and that's not part of any of my mental framework. You
Yes,
might
you
be
just
referencing
reference
God.
God.
I did not.
Yes, you just did again
No,
with the
I'm
pronoun
referencing
I.
me. I'm referencing the person who's speaking right now in a godless world. That's what I'm referencing.
For you to identify your creatureliness, in other words, for you to identify that you
I'm
are a
not.
finite being,
I'm
you are
not
not God.
identifying any creatureliness.
Yes, you are limited in size, contingent on God, who is infinite in size. So you reference God for facts. More
No, because
precisely,
I don't believe in a God. So when I reference things, I'm referencing them in a universe without God.
you're still referencing God. Again, for you to
How
know that
so?
you are, because God has
You're just
revealed himself to us.
He hasn't. You're just
You just
claiming.
referenced him. I can't
You're
claim
just
God.
claiming. No, I didn't. What did I reference that includes God? I referenced myself,
And I'll,
which references the history of the Earth, which references our solar system and the galaxy and the universe, which I don't believe was created by a God. So, in what concept am I referencing a God there?
again, for you to identify, I'll just paraphrase here. For you to identify temporalities, you have to reference God as an ultimate authority. That's a true dichotomy. The only two things that can exist in actuality is God and temporalities, complementing the law of excluded middle and Robin's law of polarity. So you just have to accept the truth. There's no loopholes in what I am saying, and I can't assert God because God is ultimate truthful love. So I can't make a subjective claim to
You just
objective
did.
truth.
You just asserted
No,
that God exists by
I
saying that he
can't.
is the truth. You just did.
I can't. I can't assert an ultimate fact. An
You
ultimate
just
fact
did. You
just
said
is.
you asserted that God is the ultimate fact, and then you contradicted yourself and said you can't assert it.
I said that I can't assert God. I'm merely expressing in words what we know within our souls,
I don't
that
know
God
it.
exists. Yes, you do. You just reference God again.
No, I
So
didn't.
what is your definition of God?
A supernatural mind. Well, a God or your God, like a
There can
Christian
only be
God.
one. There can only be one God. Firstly,
No, there's Zeus, there's Thor, there's supernatural beings that are called gods. That's how language works.
yeah,
That's what we use.
lower G God. They're
The
just fake
Judeo
gods.
the Judeo-Christian God I define as at least having the traits of an eternal mind and power to create the universe.
Yeah, an eternal, all-powerful mind. Again, to be ageless requires an all-powerful / omnipotent mind, not subjected to chaos. and absolutely loving life without suicidal tendencies. So the universe can't be eternal, as it's not all powerful with a mind to sustain itself.
Why does it need a
So,
mind?
because a mind is a precondition to remain in existence, to avoid
it's not.
any self-destruction or suicidal tendencies.
Demonstrate this assertion.
It's not an assertion, it's the truth. So
You
so
asserted that this is the truth. Now demonstrate that that is in fact the truth.
I will. So would you agree that in order to be eternal requires an omnipotence?
In order to what?
In order to be eternal requires an omnipotence.
No.
It has to be.
No,
Not
because
contingent
something
on.
can just numbers can go on forever. Time could go on forever. And it may only have the power to just do one thing. It doesn't have to have the power to do everything.
You're possibly
You're
referencing an
just
infinite
asserting that.
regression. I'm not just. This is the truth. You possibly
okay.
asserted
So-
indirectly in infinite regress. A set of numbers would be contingent on an absolute particular, as God is absolute by definition. So in
So
between these
Any argument I make, I can just say, I'm not asserting it. It's just the truth. You actually have
God
to
is ultimate
demonstrate.
truthful love.
But this is a truth
have.
claim. This is a
It's
truth
not
claim,
a
so you have to
claim.
demonstrate it.
Truth is
you are
what it
claiming
is.
it's true.
I can't make a subjective claim to objective truth. We have to
Yes,
be
you can.
revealed God.
Yes,
Not
you
in
can.
this
You can say,
in
I
this
believe
case.
I believe that there's a sun in the sky. I just made a subjective claim to an objective truth.
No, you can say there is a temporality out and above you. So you know that it's not a belief. So you know temporalities exist above you, all around you. So again, I'm not claiming or asserting God into existence, as God is an ultimate fact. So we have to be revealed who God is defaultly or from the outside in. So in order for a conception of God to be understood, we reference said conception to the actuality of God, because we can't conceptualize ultimate perfection without revelation from God. So to give you an example, we can't count to infinity. God has to reveal to us his infinite size. So God comports with mathematics as he represents the number 1. So temporalities would be a 1.1 or a 1.2.
Okay.
But God is singular by default.
If you're claiming something is true, which you're doing right now.
It's not a claim, but continue.
It's a claim.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. You are using words to convey what you think is true. If it's true,
I know it to be true.
You're claiming it's true.
Don't twist my words. I know God exists, as you do too, depending on your knowledge of the proper noun God. You just reference God again. You are
even
a
if
creature.
Even if I accidentally referenced it, I still don't know it exists.
Yes, you know God exists depending on your knowledge of the proper noun God. Because you are a temporality with edges,
I don't
you
care.
are contingent on God. You have to
Eternal
care.
things can exist without minds.
No, that's just a claim. In order to be eternal requires an omnipotent mind.
That's not a claim, it's just the truth.
No, because you're missing out prerequisites. Only an all-powerful mind can be eternal, as they have to love their existence without any suicidal or self-destructive tendencies.
Why is that a requirement?
Because an all-powerfulness, an omnipotence requires a mind to sustain themselves without self-destruction.
Why?
So, because it's the truth. And if I
Okay, so
want
your
to,
argument now is what I say is true because it's true.
yes, and I can
Okay.
use the impossibility of the contrary. Is
Okay,
that
so now we're no longer in rational territory again.
yes, we are. You're asserting things without any justification. I
No, it's
presented a
I'm not asserting anything.
justification.
It's just true. It's just truth.
You missed out a precondition for eternalness. A mind with an all-powerfulness is the necessary prerequisites for eternality, because, again, for
Prove it.
emphasis, I'll do it again. Only an all-power to be eternal requires an all-powerful consciousness choosing
But
to remain in existence without
I
chaotic.
asked you why, and you just said because it's true, which is not an
It is the
answer.
truth. You can't point out the contradiction.
No, because now
It's
I
the
can just say
truth.
it doesn't require that because it's true.
No, but I can point out your contradiction from
I can
earlier is that
I can use all of your arguments and just insert anything else, which means your argument is a failure
no.
because it's just a tautology. It's
It
true
doesn't
because it's
matter.
true.
You're making claims without pointing out the contradiction. So what I am saying is the truth. So I'll rephrase this. Only an all-powerful consciousness can be eternal, as they have to be not contingent on anything outside of themselves, with a lovingness for their existence, so they don't commit suicide or self-destruct. So the universe can't be eternal because it's not all-powerful. And even if the universe was all-powerful, there has to be a mind securing the chance of
But
it destroying itself.
only a mind can choose to destroy itself. So only a mind is capable of destroying eternality. An eternal non-mind would just not destroy itself because it has no suicidal thoughts. So that's the
And
contradiction in your statement.
what is the contradiction? There's no. You just asserted that.
The contradiction is only minds are capable of doing what you're saying, which is have suicidal thoughts, which is the one thing that you say is necessary to have an eternality.
Yeah, there are multiple prerequisites. I'm just going through one. But to stay on this point is that even if the universe was all powerful, the universe would require a mind to prevent any self-destruction. There needs to be a mind that governs omnipotence.
Why would an eternal non-mind self-destruct? What would
Because
cause
there
that?
has to be because a mind has to govern all that power, so it has to love their existence. So a mind, because a mind
No,
is
if it destroys itself, that's caused by something.
well, that's
What would
contradictory because you
that's
can't
just
have an
causation.
external core. You can't have a second particular in this scenario. Only a singular, all-powerful mind can be eternal.
So an eternal mind would not have any outside cause. An eternal non-mind would not have any outside cause causing it to self-destruct. Only a mind could do that.
No, because the universe consists of many parts. So this is why I said there are multiple ways to address this.
Okay, well, there's multiple
the
parts
universe
in God, so
not necessarily. God is irreducibly complex, but he is still one thing defaultly. So the universe consists of many parts, height, depth, and width, for example, quantum mechanics. So it can't be singular, therefore it can't be all-powerful and absolute. Only A mind can be singular because free will is independent through the law and spiritual law of cause and effect. www.newworldencyclopedia.org and 1 John 1:5 biblically. So the universe can't be eternal. You just have to accept that. You already know it's fallacious. This is you're just spouting ideologies if you make that assertion. So only God can be eternal. Thus, premise 1 is the truth by definition.
But you haven't shown why only God can be eternal.
I have only an all-powerful absolute mind can be eternal, because to be eternal requires an omnipotence, not contingent on chaos.
Why?
/disorder. That's just the truth, because in order to be
Exactly,
eternal,
that's what I was going to say. Is you just keep, your argument comes down to it's true just because it's true.
I think you're cutting out.
Your argument keeps coming down to it's true because it's true, which isn't an argument.
It's the truth. You can't point out the contradiction. In
But
order
if
to
you
be
just-
eternal,
If you just keep
you've already
saying it's true
agreed.
because it's true, you can't actually show me that it's true.
Yes, you've already agreed to this. So
I haven't agreed with
And
anything.
I'm not. You've agreed to this one precondition, that in order to be eternal requires an omnipotence. Agreed?
Absolutely not.
That's a contradiction, because to be eternal must require an omnipotence not contingent on anything outside of themselves. So you just contradicted yourself.
Non-contingent doesn't mean omnipotent.
Yes, in order to be omnipotent or eternal requires an omnipotence, not contingent on anything outside of themselves to sustain themselves. So, for example,
No, because if there's an ultimate non-contingent thing, it might only be capable of creating a universe. It might have no other capabilities, and thus it's not omnipotent.
It has to be omnipotence.
Why?
In order to be eternal requires an all-powerful mind not subjected to disorder, so not contingent on anything outside of themselves. For example,
how did you conclude that?
I'll give you an example. Then you have to summarize this, because you're possibly playing ignorant. For us to sustain our mind-body dualism, we have to take in oxygen, water, food, etc. So in order to be eternal requires an omnipotence not subjected to anything outside of themselves to sustain their existence.
But that doesn't mean omnipotent.
Yes, because this eternal mind is infinite in size. So in order to be eternal at all places at the same time requires an omnipotence.
Eternal
you just have to accept
mean at all places at all times.
Yes. To be eternal requires a singular.
If that's what you mean by eternal, that's fine. Because we're kind of going in circles on that. I would like to point out the contradiction of the fact that God is actually a contingent being, and there's no other way to conceptualize it. And
God is not a contingent being.
Well, it is, because God is a mind, and minds are patterns of thought, and patterns are contingent upon the rules of the patterns.
No, because God wills things. So he's not contingent on any. God can just will things. He is not contingent. The opposite of an infinite regression is illogical because it is a contradiction in terms. So I'll just read this off my project word for word. Just a moment as I scroll down. So categorically, infinite regressions connaturally are absurd because it is a contradiction in terms, aka in Latin philosophy, a contradictio in terminus. The adjective infinite can change with the Latin mathematical adverb ad infinitum, as stuff to infinity is subject to our omnipresent / infinitude and size Christological God. Plus, shams of infinite regressions defaultly puts the mathematical constant of pi irrational because circles are subjected to our omnitude / absolute Judeo-Christian God. So that's, you have to accept free will because God is a mind and the opposite is illogical.
No, I completely reject free will. It doesn't.
You can't,
It
because
doesn't even have a definition. You can't define it.
I refuted the opposites. The opposite. If you reject free will, you have to assert an infinite regression of causal affairs,
No,
which I've just disproven.
The concept of free will is an infinite regression.
No,
So,
it's not. Not in this case.
If I
not for God.
if I choose to like chocolate, that means I already like chocolate. So what determined my choice to like chocolate is I liked chocolate. So what determined that? Well, I would have had to have already liked chocolate to choose that. So what determined that choice? I would have already had to prefer chocolate. It's just an infinite regression.
It's not, because
I can't make a choice without already having that bias.
You can't account for the time that you were a baby. So when you were a baby,
neither can you.
But yeah, I'm not. But I can reference God to support my arguments. But in this case of this statement you've put forward, you can't account for the time that you were a baby. So when you were a baby,
I don't need
you would have.
to.
You do.
Why?
Because you would have had you would have, for this ice cream, or you reference what was you reference some food. So in order for you to know that it's yum or whatever, you had to have you have to take into the account that you would have been made known that you need to take in food from when you were a baby. So you said
that's not a choice.
It's, what do you mean it's not a choice? You have to take. You have to choose to put food in your mouth.
If you're hungry, eating makes you less hungry. That's just an observation. It's not a choice.
You haven't properly addressed my argument. So God has free will. Yes, God has free will.
I don't know what that means.
It means that he is not contingent.
Okay. All right. I have a syllogism that proves that God is contingent.
No, and I can just prove to you we have free will. So you can just visualize an image in your mind. So you can visualize the color red.
You've just contradicted yourself, because you said free will means not contingent, and then you said we have free will, meaning that us humans are non-contingent.
I said that in the case of sustaining our dualism, we are contingent on food.
So we don't have free will because we're contingent, according to your definition of free will.
Not our free will. But in regards to our vessels, more precisely our physical vessels, we are contingent for now until some of us get new bodies and God's in the kingdom. So to further justify free will, you can just do this now. You can just visualize an image in your mind. So for that effect to be put in place requires your will to be the cause. And that cause is not contingent.
Actually, you caused me to visualize an image in my mind because you mentioned that and put the idea in my head.
No, you could do it. I'm sure you have visualized many things in your mind without somebody telling you to do so. So that
Yeah, but
disproves your
that just
claim.
means no, because it doesn't have to have someone else cause it. It could be caused by my brain.
No, because the brain is separate to the mind, and for you to
Based on what?
visualize this is
If I damage the brain, the mind is damaged. They're inseparable.
no. So you
That's what all the evidence indicates. There's no
no,
evidence
'cause you
otherwise.
have to you're no, because you're appealing to a scientific method that only brings
Yeah,
you to belief statements. I'm referencing God because God has free will and we are made in His image. That disproves your claim from earlier. If you
but
say,
if
"Well, science,"
you said free
yes,
will means not being contingent,
yes,
but do we have
for
free
us
will?
to move, yes, for us to move, we have the ability to move without anything outside of ourselves. But what I meant earlier in
No,
regards to us being
we have to eat fuel.
not to move, we are not
Yes, to move.
contingent. No,
If you stop eating, then you stop moving,
but you're still moving. You can be starving,
and then you'll
but in
die,
regard,
and you won't be moving.
I'm immortal. So God, we have the ability to move without an external force. So we can ambulate without an outside force. What I mean by contingency from earlier is that for us to remain in actuality, we are contingent on God. But for us to move, that's based on our free will. So you have to choose to love God. That's the greatest commandment. So that disproves your argument. We have free will because God has free will. You can't
So
appeal
I'm
to an
non
epistemic scientific argument.
so I'm a non-contingent being.
Yeah, your free will is not contingent, but your physical vessel is contingent on external things, for example, food, oxygen,
So
etc.
so how did I decide to like crocodiles?
That's
Why did
just
my
your
mind
thing. That's just your spirit. That's just who
so
you
I
are. If you like,
was I created that way?
you were actualized to have that ability, but for
So
you
I
to
didn't choose
like
it.
you would have at some stage,
How did I
but
choose to like crocodiles unless I already liked crocodiles? Why would I choose that if I didn't already have a bias towards them? Did I just
this
roll the
is
dice? Is it random?
this is not an argument. I've already
It's
proven
not,
free
it's a
will.
question.
Yeah, questions aren't arguments. An
Correct.
argument is usually a syllogism. You can't
Correct.
provide a
My
syllogism for this.
my
Well,
question
I
is,
doubt you.
how did I decide to like crocodiles if I didn't already like them?
It's an arbitrary label, so you would have known of temporalities, but for you to like certain temporalities over other temporalities, that's just based on your free will. That's just who you are. We all have our own free will.
So my
So
just so to
yep.
explain free will, you just invoke the concept of free will.
No, I referenced the spiritual law of cause and effect and the law of cause and effect.
But
And then
if
I
there's
provided
cause
a
and
reductio.
if there's cause if this is working on cause and effect, then it's deterministic and it's not libertarian free will.
I referenced that more precisely to God. So because God has free will and we are made in his image, we have free will. I gave a reductio ad absurdum. Infinite regressions are illogical because a set of particulars is subject to an infinite in size particular.
But
So you
I
can't have.
I actually demonstrated the infinite regress of free will, which is that there's no point in which I can actually make a free choice to desire something because I would have already previously had that desire in order to make that choice to
You're not
desire something.
addressing. You're not addressing my argument.
I would have no reason to pick it. I would have no reason to pick A over B unless I already liked A more than B. So how did
I said you had
how did I
your.
originally come to like A in order to choose to like A? It's an
You're
infinite
setting up.
regress.
This is a strawman argument. I reference God because God has free will. We are made in his image. So you have to address God instead of yourself.
I don't see how that helps define what free will is.
I've already explained it. The ability the ability to move without an external force. So hypothetically, if you were in
I've
a
already
vacuum,
debunked
you would
that.
still. No, you haven't.
It's the second law of thermodynamics.
No, you can't appeal to. They're not universal laws. That's fallacious because you're not all knowing. Some of these physical laws shouldn't be called laws. So to further,
laws are just observations. They're not prescriptions.
they're not universal.
So let's go back to the God is contingent thing. I'm going to run you through my syllogism. Premise 1, patterns are contingent on rules. Do you agree or disagree?
I'll just type this out. Patterns are contingent on rules.
I've put it on the screen as well. So
patterns are contingent on rules. Would these patterns be physical things?
It can be conceptual or physical. It doesn't really matter.
Well, I would have to agree to that because patterns is a plural, so those patterns will be temporalities. So
right,
what is premise 2?
I think you said it'd be both temporalities and non-temporalities, just to clarify. Am I correct, Snake?
Yes.
Well, that's fallacious because not a particular that is not a temporality would be God. That's a true dichotomy. I've already explained this through the creator-creature distinction. Because God is ultimate truthful love, the opposite to God would be a temporality. So you can't have a set of ultimate C's. So premise 1 of your argument in regards to patterns, they would have to be temporalities. Respond?
It doesn't really matter. A pattern. Let's get a dictionary definition.
Patterns, there's a plural, so those would be contingencies or temporalities. You can't have a set of ultimate C's as there can only be one ultimate truth. There can only be one God. You just have to accept that.
So a pattern is usually defined as a repeated or regular way in which something happens or is done. So my contention is that something is defining the repetition of how it happens.
So you got a singular particular and it's moving in a pattern.
Sure.
Well, that's contradictory because that singular particular would be God and God wouldn't be contingent on rules. So premise 1 of your syllogism is a contradiction in terms. So I reject it.
Why?
Respond. Because a pattern, what you have referenced, would have to be a singular particular. Only God can be singular, so he can't be
What? I
contingent
can
on
have
rules.
one rock.
Yeah,
That's a single rock.
a rock contains many things, height, depth, and width, for example. So it is a contingency. It's
Okay, then it doesn't
irreducibly
have to be,
complex.
then it doesn't have to be a singular pattern. I don't know.
Then you're referencing a static particular.
A pattern contains multiple parts, if you will. Or
If it
else it's
contains
just a
multiple
single.
parts, then it can't be singular.
Okay, a pattern's not a singularity. It's a repeated.
What is the conclusion of this fallacious argument of yours?
It's
Or what is it trying?
this is just a premise which you agreed to and then
Yeah, but
disagreed
we're not
to.
gonna. I've already disproved. What is the conclusion?
It just seems like you're not
Because you
understanding
could be
what I'm
setting
saying.
because you possibly got like 7 premises. So what is the conclusion
There are
of
3
your
premises.
syllogism? What is the conclusion of the syllogism?
Well, we're going to go through the premises so the conclusion makes sense.
Yeah, what is the conclusion of the syllogism?
So premise 2 is God is a mind.
Okay, I'll just type this out.
I swear, as soon as I step away for a second, you all actually need some moderation.
What was that? Sorry, my headphone just fell out.
Oh, I was just teasing you. I said, as soon as I step away for a second, you all actually needed some moderation.
It's all right.
Yeah.
But the more of you we can get, the better.
Well, I'm interested in letting you finish your syllogism, though. If Ultimated could let you just round that out, so that you've both presented your syllogisms for the discussion.
Yeah. I was just gonna see if he agreed to each one, but we got sidetracked on that first one. I think the first time when he agreed, he understood it and then kind of confused. We both got confused on the particular.
No,
thing.
I wasn't confused. I had to clarify something. But
Okay.
your premise 1 is a contradiction in terms, because the pattern referenced in premise 1 would be a singular particular, not contingent on anything else. So it can't be contingent on rules.
Yeah, but that's not what I am talking about. So that's not what a pattern is. A pattern's not a singularity.
Well, patterns would be temporalities. So yes, and I agree to that. If you are meaning that patterns would represent a set of particulars, then yes, they would be contingent on rules.
Okay. Do you agree with premise 2?
Yes.
Okay. Premise 3 is minds are patterns of thought.
Minds are patterns of thought. I'll just think this over. I would say, well, this requires clarification. So, in regards to the law of cause and effect, for me to pick up an object, that cause would be my free will. Would that comport with premise 3 of your syllogism?
What was that? Sorry.
When I go to pick up an object, the cause for that would be my free will, and it doesn't go further back.
I don't see how that is relevant to the premise.
It is, because mind is a semantic label to free will. So I'm clarifying.
Is free will a pattern of thought?
I don't know what you mean. So I have to clarify what you mean by mind. So when you reference mind or
Oh, that
minds,
is how
are
I'm
you
defining. That's how I'm defining mind. It's a patterns of thought.
is that free will you are referencing?
Can we have Snake
No.
just real quick, because he posed a question to you to kind of to make clarify the answer to this. Do you recognize that he asked you if you recognize that minds are just a semantic what was we call it, a semantic for
Free will?
free will? Yeah. Is that a premise you accept as part of your syllogism, Snake? Or do you
No,
reject
but
that?
for the purposes of understanding what a pattern of thought is, we could accept that free will is a pattern of thought.
Okay.
Your premise 3 requires clarification. So what when you say mind or minds, are you referencing free will?
I don't believe free will exists, but let's.
You have to, because God has free will and we are made in his image. And I gave a reductio ad absurdum, the impossibility of the contrary of infinite regressions. God is absolute, thus he is an uncaused cause, or immutably mutable, zoetic. He has life / libertarian free will. He
Is
is not
free will
contingent.
a pattern of thought by your definition?
I don't know what you mean by pattern of thought. So these contingencies.
It's a repeated design or regular way in which something happens or is done. So a thought pattern is basically rules that define what the thought is. So the
Well, look,
pattern would
this
be
is
like blue, recognition
what is
of
the
blue, interacting with other recognitions of concepts, which create thoughts, which create minds.
yeah, I'm still not fully understanding this. So why don't you just present the conclusion and I'll just debunk the conclusion?
Well, the conclusion follows from the premises, so you would have to debunk the premises. And the conclusion, it's
No,
on the
I could just
screen.
debunk the conclusion because God is not contingent on pattern rules. So are these pattern
But that's not
rules
how
in
logic
your
works.
conclusion a part of God or outside of God?
If my premises are all true, then the conclusion follows.
No, because I can just debunk the conclusion. So my clarifying question firstly, are
That's
these
not how logic
patterns?
works.
It can. So when these patterns or rules, are they a part of God or outside of God?
If God is a mind, then thought patterns are part of God.
Yes, and God is a singular particular. So he can't have
So we
by
can't have thoughts.
default these thoughts of his or whatever it is you're referencing, they wouldn't be little bits of pieces inside of him. God has free will. He just wills things.
I'm not suggesting that needs to be a mechanical part of God, but I'm saying that a mind has thoughts, and thoughts are governed by patterns. Patterns are governed by rules, therefore minds are governed by these patterns and rules, and therefore the mind of God is contingent upon these patterns and rules.
You've just refuted your own argument because if you're not referencing mechanical bits, the alternative would be a singular God, not contingent.
It could be spiritual bits. It doesn't matter.
It would be one spiritual particular
That's
without
doesn't have any patterns.
bits.
That
You can't, because
so
God is
there's no
absolute.
thoughts. So it's not a mind.
Yes, God is infinite in size, so we can't have multiple infinite in size things inside of him
I didn't
as
suggest
those.
that was the case.
It has to be, because God is absolute. So you can't appeal to him being contingent on himself as bits of pieces, spiritual or physical, would just be a part of God's infinite size.
It sounds like
So
you're
you're
just disagreeing on definition.
No, I'm disagreeing on truth. What I said was the truth. God exists,
No, what I said
and
was true.
because you are referencing God to argue against him. So that's the fallacy of a contradictio
I
interminus.
referenced the concept of God.
You have to
Okay,
appeal to the actuality of God.
real quick before we go on, we are just about at an hour of open discussion. I don't know if you all had any format you wanted to go with at this point moving forward, but I don't know if we've beat this horse with enough sticks at this point.
Yeah. Well, I want to give him the opportunity to at least finish his syllogism, and then I could try to react quickly to those, but I think we've pretty much covered the tactic here.
Well, to address your last claim, in order for a conception of God to be understood, we have to cross-reference said conception to the actuality of God. I may have said that already like over 3 times early on, as we can't conceptualize out of nothing ultimate perfection. And I gave this example, so I do remember we can't count to infinity. We have to be revealed God's absoluteness defaultly and from the outside in.
Well, I agree that we can't conceptualize absolute perfection. I think that such a thing can't exist.
You just presuppose God, and because the word exist is a verb, when people say God doesn't exist, what they are saying is God doesn't do things. However, God does do things as he is personal by definition through revealed theology. This is why atheism and agnosticism is illogical, because it presupposes God within the title.
If God doesn't exist, then he doesn't do things. So that I'm perfectly
You're
consistent within my worldview.
No, because your if statement is contingent on God as he is ultimate truthful love.
It's
Yes, you
contingent
provided
upon the laws. It's contingent upon the laws of logic, ultimately,
God.
which
I referenced God's
God
prescriptive laws
is
of logic.
contingent on. So
God's prescriptive laws of logic / thought. So the
God
first
can't
A.
God can't think or prescribe anything without following the laws of logic, or else he wouldn't be God. Because if he's not following the law
God
of
is
identity,
logical.
if God isn't following the laws of logic, then God is not following the law of identity, which means he is both
God
God
is
and
the
not.
law of identity.
He is both God. He is both God and not God at the same time.
No, that's a contradiction. The famous quote in Exodus 3:14, God said to Moses, "Say to the children in Israel, I am who I am." And I've already gone through this.
Right.
God is an ultimate fact, backing the law of identity that A is A. So the first A would be a singular, all-powerful, ultimate particular. The second A would just be a definition or a tautology to the first A. So God is an ultimate fact.
If A equals A, that means that God is God, which means God is contingent upon the law of identity. Otherwise,
no, God
otherwise
is that,
A is not
because God prescribes all things, so he is that law.
If God is not contingent upon the law of identity, he is both A and not A at the same time, which is a contradiction.
No, because not
Which
A
means
would
he's
be a
not God.
temporality.
So he has to
And
follow the
not-
law of identity. He has to. He has no choice.
God is logical.
Right.
The not A would be
God
a
is
temporality.
God is defined and constrained and contingent upon logic, or else he's not God.
No, God is logical,
Right, I agree.
because yes, and I'll read this off my project.
Because otherwise he wouldn't be God. So
I'll just read this just briefly. Firstly, God's prescriptive laws of logic and his prescriptive laws of thought are synonymous. So I'll just skip some bits here. So more basically, God and his prescriptive laws of logic /thought are reciprocal for being absolute, eternal, and revelational. Even more basically, God's divinity /mentality prescribed logicalities throughout his reality rather than being creaturely descriptive. Categorically, contrary to God's prescriptive laws of logic /thought will be trivialism. God would not sempiternally change conscious creatures' understandings of falsities / contradictions to be true. So God is logical. You just have to accept that.
I already accepted it.
Yeah, so then we can move on to premise 2. God authorized the Bible.
Well, you can't demonstrate that, so.
I can. Simple. So God authorized the Bible /biblicalism, backing evidentialism /epistemic foundationalism. More basically, ontotheology /agape theism biblically backs Genesis 1:1 to Revelation 22 verse 21 for fallen humans to cross-reference facts before getting heavenly rewards. Romans 3:23 and Jeremiah 17:10 biblically. Even more basically, an ultimate truthful lover wants themselves known within early evidentialism, more biblically precisely Genesis 1:1 onwards, so conscious creatures can know that they exist above fake gods. Again, even more basically, God's non-physical truthful lovingness involves the creation of energy /matter with evidentialism /epistemic foundationalism, biblically through Genesis 1:1 to Revelation 22 verse 21 for fallen humans to rightly maintain their mind-body dualism. Categorically contrary to God's biblical authorization /evidentialism would be the non-biblical authorization /evidentialism of another sacred book. God's infallible, thus God's biblical authorization /evidentialism follows. Conditionally, if God authorized the Bible /evidentialism, then it is sacred and the top-selling book worldwide, plus Judeo-Christianity /Christianity would be the leading religion worldwide. The Bible /evidentialism is sacred and the top-selling book worldwide, www.guinnessworldrecords.com. Further, Judeo-Christianity /Christianity is the leading religion worldwide, www.worldpopulationreview.com. Therefore, God authorized the Bible /evidentialism. Disjunctively, if God authorized another sacred book, then the Bible /evidentialism is absurd. The Bible /evidentialism is sacred. Thus, God authorized the Bible /evidentialism. Lastly, the Bible /biblicalism brings some minds Christianly /lovingly closer to God. So that's my justification for premise 2. So can you summarize that?
No.
Thanks. Yes.
What I got from that is Christianity is the most popular religion, therefore it's true, and an ultimate truthful lover wants to be known, which is false because I don't know him.
You agreed to premise 1. You have to agree to that.
What was that premise?
Premise 1 is in regards to
this one.
Yes, but you have to agree.
I don't agree to it. I don't.
You have to, because
in fact, I'm using my free will to not believe in God, which is very contradictory.
You agreed to premise 1. You agreed to premise 1. So now you're possibly backtracking after I gave my argument for premise 2.
I do not believe in premise 1. I rejected it the whole time.
You agreed to premise 1. It's all on recording.
I did not.
Well, you just presuppose God with the pronoun
don't.
I. I've already gone through. You just did
I don't.
again. The pronoun I references God. As
False.
you are a creature.
All right.
For you to say,
But we're gonna stop right here. Because this is just evolving at this point. As far as Snake agreeing to premise one, I don't believe he agreed to that. As far as I'm aware on this stream, can you cite what he had said that gave you the
I
interpretation?
can't remember, but I can't remember word for word, but I wouldn't have gone so far deep into premise 2 without him interjecting.
I think he can
So
grant it, but he can grant the premise without actually
he didn't say that.
acquiescing to the. Okay, Snake.
You have to accept premise 1.
Well, let's start over from premise 1 then. Snake, do you accept premise 1 of Ultimated's syllogism here?
No.
That's fallacious because for you to say something is wrong, you reference God as he is ultimate truthful love. The same applies for physicalities / science. To identify physicalities, we reference an immaterial God. For you to identify your creatureliness, we reference an immaterial God. So all facts references God. So it's not a matter of granting premise 1. You just have to accept premise 1 as it's the truth definitionally.
All I'm referencing is the laws of logic, so I'm not referencing God.
God is logical. You're referencing God with the laws of logic. I said God's prescriptive laws of logic / thought.
But we already proved that if God is not contingent on the laws of logic, he's not God, because
your conditional
he's not God
statement presupposes
and God, at the same
God.
time, which is
that's just a claim.
Contradiction.
That's just an assertion.
So is the assertion that I reference God. It is a false assertion.
It's not an assertion. It's the truth.
My final thing that I would like to say about premise 2 is that it contradicts premise 1 because ultimate truthful love could not have written the Bible. That is because it's full of evil.
He authorized the Bible, and God can't be evil or omnimalevolent, as we are not in omnipotent or nigh omnipotent pain.
Then the Bible doesn't represent God because the Bible's evil.
Yes, it does. The Bible is not evil. It's the top-selling book worldwide because a perfect God would make sure that it is.
If the Quran became the top-selling book worldwide, would it be true?
Your hypothetical is illogical because you're presupposing our biblical God.
No.
Yes.
I was in that hypothetical. I was presupposing the Quranic God, Allah.
For you to identify the Quran or to put it forward as an argument, you are presupposing our Judeo-Christian God.
No.
Yes, because if you say, well, what if the Quran was this? Your hypothetical statement presupposes God biblically.
So this is the wall, and maybe this is a good time to give our closing statements. I think we can't really have a
as far as you're going to get.
Yeah, we can't really have a conversation because you say I believe something, I say I don't. You say that I reference something, I explain to you why I'm not referencing it, and then you just repeat that I'm referencing it. So we can't really get anywhere.
I'm speaking the truth. You can't point out contradictions in what I am saying.
But I can just say this. I can just say I'm speaking the truth, and I've done just as much intellectual work as you, which is none.
You can say that, but you have to reference God as he is ultimate truthful love. You are not God. Just accept that. You are contingent on God. I just sent a private message. If you can address that before we finish. But again, just for emphasis.
That's more backstage kind of stuff.
Yeah, we can end the stream and then keep the
Yeah,
room open.
let's do closings. So, since it's your channel, Snake, do you want to go first?
Well, I guess I'll summarize. Let me see here. Well, basically, you're just asserting that I believe something that I know I don't. That I reference something that I'm explicitly not referencing. When pressed as to why you believe that or how you can justify it, you just say it's true. So you can't actually give a reason. Therefore, it's not an argument, it's just an assertion, and therefore it is not rational. Therefore, I can't accept your claim. As for your premises, I'll just, just for anyone who's catching up in the end, ultimate truthful lover wants to be known. I don't know God. I can only speak from my personal experience. I don't know why I would lie about that. I don't know him. And I think that the two premises contradict each other because the Bible seems evil to me. I have to be able to judge the Bible because if I can't judge it bad, then I can't judge it good. Therefore, I have to be able to judge the Bible. And that's kind of my whole approach is I have to have logic first. God is contingent on logic. My analysis of God is contingent on me understanding logic. My understanding of God is contingent on logic. God himself, if he's not contingent on logic, is not contingent to the law of identity, which means God is both God and not God at the same time, which can happen. So if there is a God, I agree that it is logical, but that would make God contingent on logic. I didn't seem to find any meaning in free will. Because you said it means non-contingent, which would make humans non-contingent gods. I don't think we had a coherent definition of free will, but using what I could understand from this concept, I could use free will to just will myself to not believe in God, which would debunk a lot of your assertions. And that concept in itself is kind of shows the absurdity of free will. So basically, I would sum up, if I could use your tactic to do anything, to make any argument, and I could just say that it's true because it's true. So this makes your arguments basically useless, and hard to have a conversation over because you just say it's true, and when I ask you why, ultimately you get down to it's just true, but you can't demonstrate it's true. The same thing with what I was talking about with the Bible. If I can't judge it to be bad, I can't judge it to be good. But if I just blindly accept it to be good, that means that same methodology means that I would have to blindly accept the Quran. They're interchangeable. So it's a useless methodology. And hopefully I have not bored anyone with my rambling closing statement, and I turn it over to you.
Okay, so I've got around 9 points here. So my closing will address these 9 claims of yours, and then I'll give a brief summary overall. So firstly, I can't assert God. God is an ultimate fact. So I can't make a subjective claim to objective truth. Now the second point, God is logical due to his attributes. They all comport with each other. Backing ontotheology or meta-ontotheology, You are a creature contingent on God. You just have to accept that truth. The next point, hypotheticals presupposes God. So any if statements or conditional statements has to reference God. This is why I've stated within my patreon.com account is that categoricalism trumps conditional and disjunctives. The next point, God represents the law of identity. A is A. You reference the law of identity and then you reference the law of non-contradiction. So God, A is A. God is an ultimate fact. The not A within the law of excluded middle and the law of non-contradiction would be the opposite to God. So a contingency or hypothetically absolute nothingness. So that's a trichotomy. Absolute nothingness is impossible by definition due to the root contingency of instant actualization. I may have already gone through this, but I'll just do it briefly. Stuff can't causelessly spawn without an eternal mind because everything is irreducibly complex. So, for example, the universe contains multiple parts of height, depth, and width. So it requires an eternal mind to simultaneously actualize dimensional particulars. The next point, free will exists because God has free will and we are made in his image. The next point, what I am saying is the truth. The next point, if you disagree with the truth, then you have to point out a contradiction. You have yet to point out a contradiction in anything that I have said. And the last point, the first sentence of the Quran doesn't reference an immaterial creator God, as God is ultimate truthful love. So God would want to make his attributes known to us within early scripture to falsify all other abstract gods. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Creation is an expression of love, and because God is love, he would make this known to us simply within Genesis 1:1. And then to finalize this closing, to summarize this ultimative syllogism, God's existence involves his authorization of the Bible /biblicalism, thus Judeo-Christian /biblical presuppositionalism follows. If someone accepts Judeo-Christian /biblical presuppositionalism, then they may still promote absurd ideologies to back their indirect or direct Satanism, depending on their knowledge of the Bible /biblicalism. No one can force implicit or explicit Satanists to love God, as that would contradict their life /libertarian free will. Thus, love must come by choice. So that's my closing. I yield my time.
All right, that was we ran that right up to an hour and a half. That's just about perfect for a little nice little impromptu debate, I think, guys. It was interesting to watch you all kind of tussle about these concepts and stuff. So I appreciate y'all you inviting me on to moderate this, Snake, and thank you for coming on to give us some entertainment tonight, Ultimated. Yeah.
Thank you, Bree.
Yeah, turn it over to the host here.
Yeah, I liked your moderation style a lot. And thank you to Ultimated for coming on and, giving it your all.
Yes, I will be just quickly, just off topic. So I will be posting this to my youtube.com channel. So I will put your name, so forth. So I hope you will do the same, as I am paying you money for this. So I'm assuming this stream will just go straight to your upload section.
Yeah, it might not show up for like 24 hours ish, but yeah, I'm gonna keep it up. It's on my channel now.
As long as he has the link, he should be able to download it, though, if he's just getting a copy of it.
I am recording. I've got it all recorded on my side, so I will upload this. It may take under an hour, 2 hours max. but I do need to get some details off you, Snake, if you can address the private message, because the details you gave me didn't work when I.
Why don't we
yeah,
close
we'll-
the show out and then you all can talk about that backstage? That
We'll
seems
get
like
to
the
that,
best
yep.
way to move forward.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and thank you to the audience.
Yeah, we had
I
some
know
great people show up
I
out
have
there.
been a little inactive over this holiday season. I'm trying to get back into it. I've had a lot on my plate, but we'll have some good content for you very soon, and keep tuned. All right.